Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the bi-week edition of the Spartan Tailgate podcast, episode 6. I'm joined here. This is Chris Vanini. I'm joined, as always, by Dan Kilbridge. Dan, how you doing?
Doing well, Chris. It was not the best week in Big Ten history, so we've got some things to talk about. But yeah, doing fine. Ready to go here.
Yeah, we'll hit that, and we'll hit a couple things. But first, I wanted to ask, I've been trying the last few weeks to get this onto iTunes. I found a bunch of hosting services, but they all cost money, and I'd rather not have to pay for it and keep track of that and everything because I'm cheap. If any, I've got the audio archived on archive.org. I've just been having trouble getting it into an RSS to send to iTunes. If anybody listening has any advice for me or tips or anything, let me know either in the thread or at Chris Vanini or chrisvanini@gmail.com. Any of that help would be appreciated, and I'm sure you guys would like an easier way, an automatic way to download it and stuff like that. So
That was quite the cry for help.
yes, I consider myself pretty tech savvy too.
Sure.
iTunes is apparently pretty difficult to get into unless you kind of use a service that sets it up pretty easily. Been
Yeah,
trying to
you gotta know a guy.
Yeah, I've been trying to just kind of do it on my own, but been a pain in the butt. So anyway, this weekend we had some interesting viewing situations. Dan, you had a wedding,
I
and
did.
I lost power on Friday and didn't get it back until Wednesday afternoon, totaling about 116 hours. Uh, I almost kind of wanted to get to 127 hours so I could, compare myself to the guy who had to bite his arm off. But
Sure.
I was able to watch the
Those are
game.
those are comparable situations.
Yeah. I was able to watch the game at my parents' place. How was it watching it at a wedding? How'd that go down?
It was good. The wedding was on Friday, so when the power went out, the bride was getting ready, and the power goes out,
Oh,
and
you had the power walk out there?
yeah. It went out in
Awesome. All right.
Chicago too, just for a little bit, like 5 minutes. But yeah, the poor bride it's already raining, so she's already bummed, and then the power goes out in the hotel, and apparently she's got like a curling iron hooked up and just loses it. Meanwhile, we're all just kind of hanging out drinking in the breakfast room downstairs, and the power goes out, and it's just sort of like, huh, that's different. No reaction, but. The wedding went well, and then on Saturday ended up at a BW3 in Hoffman Estates, Illinois, and yeah, enjoyed the game, man. What a hell of a game! I mean, just taking a step back, what a great college football game that was for 3.5 quarters.
So there's a place in Illinois called Hoffman Estates, like that's the name of the city.
Yeah, and it's a huge city. I mean, it's unbelievably expansive. I'm not sure the population off the top of my head, but it is a massive city.
Huh. And whenever I hear estates, it makes me think of Back to the Future, when
Naturally.
that's where they wanted to live. But so yeah, an exciting game, no doubt. The Spartans fell behind 18-7 early, rallied for a 20-0 run to take a 27-18 lead before Oregon finished it out with a 28-0 run for the 46-27 victory in a game that was closer than the final score, and I think anybody who watched had said the same thing. Spartans fell to number 13 in the polls, but they're still the highest ranked one-loss team, which I think is, fair if you're going to be into polls and all that. But I guess to start off looking back at this game, start since they lost. What went wrong? What were the, I guess, keys that led to the loss for the
Yeah.
Spartans to you?
Sure. To me, it was their inability to run the ball in the second half. I think that really hurt them because then, Connor Cook was put in some difficult positions, and they never really established that rhythm that they had on offense in the second half, or excuse me, in the second quarter. But yeah, I thought that was big, and defensively, obviously, it was sort of a mix of mental and physical mistakes. I mean, you have the one touchdown where Trey Waynes just falls down, and it's kind of, what are you going to do? There's another touchdown where Darian Hicks sort of gets picked off of Allen, one of the fastest guys in college football, and so that's a touchdown. And then there was a miscommunication when they went trips left, and it just sort of went downhill in the second half. So I think a couple things came into that. There was fatigue, I think, did play a factor. We saw guys miss tackles, not so much the Mariota ones in the backfield, but in the secondary where they had opportunities to take guys down and couldn't stop them from getting in the end zone. So, hey, man, I just think it took so much out of them to put that run together in the second quarter. I mean, they fought back furiously, sort of like, you think about both Big Ten championships games. It sort of seemed like where they had to put so much energy into that second quarter comeback. Defense really played well. Offense looked outstanding, and they battled back, but that just really seemed to take a toll on them down the stretch.
Yeah, it seems to be a trend in these big games for them, coming slow out of the gates, then really getting on a roll, especially in the second quarter, and then kind of seeing how the second half goes. It's felt like Oregon's offense was going or it wasn't going on whether or not the Spartans were wrapping up Mariota. Because in the first half, when Oregon jumped out to that lead, Mariota, it was reminding me of Vince Young against Michigan in the Rose Bowl back in 04-05, where he was just slipping out ahead. It was like he was like covered in oil, and they just couldn't get a grip of him. But and then that one play, I think, in the third quarter changed everything, where there was about 3rd and 9, 3rd and 10, and he just sidesteps 2 sack opportunities, a shovel pass over for about a 17-yard gain. And from that point on, Oregon didn't really miss a beat. Up until that point, they had been 1 for 9 on third downs, and third downs was one of my keys to the game because that's how you get them off the field. You get them off, when you have a chance to get them off. And after that, including that play, they finished 5 for their last 7 on third down, and the 2 ones they didn't convert were when they were just trying to run out the clock. So if you don't even count those. But you got to play, perfect defense against Oregon, and for a stretch there, they were when they went on that run, but a couple breakdowns and Oregon's going to take advantage of you, and I think that's where we saw the youth and inexperience in some parts of this defense shine through, which is is certainly a tough situation for them. I don't think they'll play a tougher offense maybe in the rest of their college careers. And for a lot of those guys, for it to be their second game starting, first road game, it's a tough environment. And if you take out that last touchdown or if it's a field goal, it's about a 15-point game, and I think that's pretty respectable. I think everybody watching that game could tell that MSU can play with anybody in the country. But against Oregon, if you slip up just a little bit, they're going to take advantage, and they did down the second half there.
Yeah, no, definitely. And you talk about the young guys making mistakes a little bit, but there were some older guys too that played a lot of football.
Yeah, I think it's an inexperience. When I say inexperience, I think I mean an inexperience working together.
Sure. Okay.
Communicating between a safety and a corner or something like that. Yep. I think they're still getting used to playing with each other.
Yeah, but even like Shalik Calhoun, I mean, he played great, and I thought the defensive line really pushed Oregon around for the first half and much of the second half. But Calhoun was in position a couple times and couldn't finish, so it wasn't just Darian Harris and these guys that in their first time starting. It was Mariota's just that good, where he's going to make even guys like Shalik Calhoun and Marcus Rush look silly on occasion.
Yeah, and I mean, we can that transitions into what went right. I think the defensive line played really well. At halftime, Oregon was averaging 0.9 yards per carry, which is just incredible. Marcus Rush, I think we all expected him to have a good game, and he did. He read everything perfectly. He was breaking up plays, getting held from time to time on the edge there. But I thought the defensive line played great. Joel Heath, I think, did a good job of breaking through, although he didn't. He was another guy who didn't wrap up. but he was a guy I saw out there. He's a guy I noticed, kind of getting in position or kind of breaking through that line in terms of what went right, and also on offense. There was a stretch there, when they're doing well, that Connor Cook looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the country, he was getting good protection. But as you kind of saw it start to wear, you saw them. It looked like they were starting to wear down Oregon in that second quarter, especially running the ball. And you thought that was going to carry through, but it didn't. And we can get into that. But in terms of the good, what went right, what stuck out to you?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think Cook definitely, aside from the one bad interception, I thought that, I didn't know what he saw in that throw where he kind of put it into triple coverage. And that's a play that he got away with a lot last year. So when we talk this offseason about Connor Cook limiting those mistakes being important, that's kind of where it pops up, because he didn't get away with this time. Second interception, that wasn't really his fault. They had tight coverage on A.J. Troop. I was fine with him throwing that ball in there to Troop. He's a big guy, and maybe he makes a play. He doesn't, and, they're Ifo Ekpre Olumu. I'm sure I just butchered that terribly, but I'm going to call him IEO. He had a remarkable interception, so that wasn't his fault. And I thought he played very well for much of the night. And then beyond that, I mean, like I said, the defensive line and the defense on the whole looked outstanding for stretches. And I wrote about this a little bit, but when I went back and watched the game on Monday, it was the defense that stood out to me in that second quarter run. I mean, when I watched the first time, it's, oh my God, Connor Cook's making these great throws. The offense is moving the ball and they're putting up points, and that's kind of what was impressive. But when you look back, the defense put them in great position. They were starting, near the 50 most of those drives, and MSU's defense getting big 3-and-outs, playing discipline, and that's why Oregon's so dangerous. I mean, you can play them extremely well for 3 quarters, and they're still going to make you pay on occasion, and more often than not. But those stood out. Other than that, I thought individually, Demetrius Cooper showed a lot. I thought that was promising. Lawrence Thomas. Mylon Hicks is a guy who really plays fast and had one penalty in the game, but otherwise I thought Mylon Hicks looked pretty good. And that's kind of fun to see a guy who is, built up as this 4-star recruit and can't sniff the field and now changes positions and is finally making impact. So I like that. And overall, I just thought, I thought they looked good. And I think even though right now we're talking about Michigan State in terms of the playoff picture, I think you got to give them credit for going and playing Oregon. I mean, they easily could have scheduled any number of teams at home and beat them by 4 or 5 scores, and you're going into the rest of the season saying, hey, Michigan State doesn't have a loss on the schedule because of how bad the Big Ten looked, and they're looking at an undefeated run. So I just think, credit to Michigan State for playing this game, and I thought they showed up.
Yeah, I mean, I had the 3 biggest takeaways I had, and I was unable to watch a replay because of power issues. I couldn't DVR the game. But the first was that the lack of depth on the offensive line, I think, stuck out.
Yeah.
In that third quarter, because they listed 8 offensive linemen on the chart. I didn't really notice Clemens or McGowan, who apparently played, but
Clemens played a defensive tackle for a series.
Oh, he did? Okay, I didn't.
Yeah, he was not on the offensive line, and McGowan, I think, I'm not positive on this, but I think McGowan was only in on special teams.
That's the thing I couldn't go through and check.
Right, because I think you're right. I think they only played 6 linemen with Brian Allen being the 6th.
Allen played left guards. So I think he played center on that last touchdown drive of the first half.
It was I think it was the Langford run where he was in at center.
I think that was the first.
Yeah, and he actually had sort of a pancake block on that touchdown run and just sort of fell on top of his his guy, but like stuck his arms out as he was falling to show like I'm not holding him. I'm just taking him to the ground.
Yeah, I mean they knew he was good, but for them to put him at center, I think really speaks volumes about what they think of him to make the offensive line calls and stuff like that.
Yep.
That's pretty impressive. The other thing I mentioned, the perfect defense you got to play for 60 minutes against Oregon, because a lot of people saw whatever a 13-point line and was like, wow, that's a lot of points. Well, yeah, because Oregon puts up a lot of points really quickly,
Right.
and that was always that I mentioned. I wouldn't have bet on this game because if MSU gets that fourth down stop at the end, they cover, but instead Oregon goes for it on fourth down, gets a touchdown out of it, and it looks like a blowout. So, and the other thing is Tony Lippett looked really, really good again. 11 catches, 133 yards, 1 touchdown. He was up against Ekpre Ualo.
IEO, Chris. Yeah, just make it easy on yourself.
For quite a bit. They also moved him inside. They kind of moved him around a bit, and he was very clearly Connor Cook's number one guy. And he had some crisp route running, did a great job of. Oregon was playing really tight on the outside with its corners, and he did a great job of getting open, breaking free, whether it was breaking the jam at the line and going out, or on a curl route. A couple of those they ran. Through 2 games, he's playing like one of the best receivers in the country right now, against a pretty good team in Oregon. So, and this wasn't a Jacksonville State case where he had a couple 70-yard touchdown catches, but it's almost a year now when Lippett kind of stepped out in that Iowa game last year where all the receivers really turned the corner there, and ever since then he's been a top-notch receiver, and he showed it again on Saturday. And the big picture, what does it mean? You kind of talked about it, the playoff picture and whatnot. I think with MSU currently at 13, they're in a pretty good spot, but it will be hard to rise up. And I know the polls don't matter, but I find it really hard to believe that the committee is going to not be influenced by these polls. If there seems to be if people seem to think Florida State's number one, they're going to put Florida State number one. Personally, my top 5 would have gone Oregon, Georgia, Texas A&M, Notre Dame, USC, just based solely on what you've done this year. I think those teams have looked really good through 2 games. Who knows what it means, but at least right now. So I do think the polls are going to matter when the committee comes out. I think they'll be consciously, subconsciously influenced by them. But I do think the Big Ten is pretty much out of it, other than MSU. We'll talk more about the Big Ten later, but and it kind of comes down to, again, of how many committee members watched the game. Considering it was kind of the marquee game, maybe you got a lot more eyeballs than you would have otherwise. And like we said, the final score doesn't look indicative of the game, so anybody who watched the game probably has a different view than people who did watch it, than people who didn't watch it. So, who knows about that? But do you think the perception of Michigan State football changed at all? I got the sense that it was this big showdown between the offense versus the defense, and Oregon's offense came out with the edge. But I didn't get the sense that anyone came away saying power football is dead, or Michigan State's defense was all smoke and mirrors. I think the way the game went, where you had 2 big runs by both teams playing at the top of their level, and each was able to showcase what they can do, I think that helped the perception of MSU in the loss, which is why I think watching the game, I think, helps your perception of MSU compared to if you didn't. So, I mean, do you think any opinions changed for the better or for the worse on Michigan State football? Or?
Not really. I mean, kind of, you sort of hit the nail on the head. I mean, it wasn't like this definitive performance from either team. It was back and forth, and in the end, Oregon outlasted them. And hey, Michigan State was a 13-point dog, and that's about what it is. It could have gone either way. Oregon was, one of the most respected teams in the country. They still are, and Michigan State, I think, is viewed as a team that's right on the cusp of being, what Oregon is. And do they ever get there? Who knows? But they are right there, and they have proven time and time again over the last, I want to say 5 years. I know they had 2012, but they didn't necessarily get blown out in 2012. I think they've proven over the past 4 or 5 years that they can play with anyone in the country, and I guess that would be since the Alabama game.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, other than
2010.
Alabama.
Yeah. Right. Well, yeah, that was just something else. But, if that game happens again today, I think Michigan State matches up much, much better just because they were totally outclassed, and that was a sort of humbling moment for the program to realize, hey, we got to share the Big Ten, but this is how college football is played at the highest level, and clearly you aren't even close. Well, now here they are, and they are close, and they're going to look back at the film and kick themselves because they had opportunity after opportunity to win the game and couldn't get it done. So, no, I really don't think perceptions change at all. I know my perception of either team certainly didn't change. I know I picked Michigan State to win, and still feel that they could have won the game. So overall, I think the thing that sticks out to me, it was the most watched college game of the week. It was talked about nonstop on ESPN and Fox Sports and whatever it may be all throughout the week. So anytime your program gets that kind of exposure continually throughout the week, and this is what Mark Hollis thinks about on a day-to-day basis is his job, but anytime you get that exposure, that's huge for your team.
Yeah, and on the same day that they're playing that Michigan at the same time that Michigan and Notre Dame are playing their final game, you kind of see this new. I mean, like you said, credit to MSU and Oregon for scheduling this game because it was a lot of fun for just a general college football fan, and it's kind of an interesting. You see what MSU is doing. Their Notre Dame series just kind of ended with no fanfare and whatnot. But they've got Oregon, they've got Miami, they've got Arizona State coming up. Michigan is going away. Their series is ending with Notre Dame. And for the next few years, they don't have many interesting names coming in. You got like Arkansas and Oregon State and Utah and UCF. I mean, they are scheduling, UCLA and maybe Texas down in the 2020s, which is all nice. But for the next few years, they're not going to really have that many interesting marquee games while MSU is at least trying to go for one. And I saw a lot of people say this kind of exemplifies the new playoff mentality, even though this was scheduled before there was a playoff and it didn't play into that. So I thought that was kind of a weird mix to make. But it was a lot of fun. Oregon's going to go to East Lansing next year. That's going to be a lot of fun. Hopefully both teams are just as highly ranked and they can get another big national TV audience and attention to it because it's a fun clash of styles, and it was a really fun game to watch on Saturday. So kind of moving on from that game here, we're gonna touch several different topics. But before we move into Big Ten, I wanted to stay on MSU, and you and Jack Ebling have put together your list of the top 70 MSU football players of the BCS era. Kind of explain why 70 and kind of what that's all about.
Yeah, well, originally we started with 100, and then we thought, well, let's make this easier on ourselves and realize that, hey, a Big Ten travel roster is 70 players, so why don't we come up with the all-time Big Ten travel roster for MSU in the BCS era? Because originally we started out saying, well, let's do all Michigan State players. And it's like, well, how do you compare these guys that were playing in the 1930s, 40s, and 50s to the guys that are playing now? I mean, that's going to be a little too difficult, I think. So we decided to go with the BCS era. I think it was a great idea. So, guys who played in 1998 or later. It was a lot of fun putting the list together, a lot of disagreements, a lot of arguing with fellow media members we consulted throughout the process, tried to get a variety of opinions, and ultimately we came up with a list that we feel good about, but I'm sure others won't. And so it's we're expecting some backlash certainly, but that's part of the fun of doing these rankings anyway. So we unveiled 70 through 66 today with Tyler Hoover, the first to go at number 70. And, some people said they were surprised that Hoover made the list. I think he was an undervalued piece of that defense kind of throughout his career when he was healthy, persevered through injury, played 6 years in East Lansing, and helped build the foundation. So I think he was a great choice for the list, and it's been fun doing it. So we're going to do 5 a day until we're through here, and you can find that at michiganstate.247sports.com.
So this is going to be every day? It's going to be every weekday?
I believe every weekday, yeah.
Now, when you went through this, did you start with one and go down, or did you just start kind of nailing guys and building around that? How did you come up with the list?
Yeah, I mean, we basically that's kind of how we did. First, we wanted to identify the right guys, and so you rattle off maybe 40 names where you go, okay, they're definitely in there, and you can just do that, boom, 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 and you've got your 40 or maybe even 50, and then after that, you start to have these comparisons. How do you compare Chris Norman to Charlie Gant? Those types of discussions that are difficult but fun to have, and we just sort of came up with finally a rough draft of what we felt comfortable with, and just revised it, and until we lost count. But it was fun, and I'm sure that it's something that it will create some discussion, and also just it's fun to look back on some of these guys too, and remember what they were, before the program was what it is today.
Somebody asked in the comments, where is Agim Shabai on this list?
Ooh, well, I can't tell you because there's got to be a suspense factor here.
Can you tell us if he's on it or no? You want to hold that?
Agim Shabai did not make the list.
He did not make the list.
Did not make the list.
Brent Musburger is upset.
Yeah, I mean, he was a I think he was a star that shone too brightly. You know what I mean? He came on and he had he always had the pro forearm pads that I love. They call those pros. It's just essentially it's like a piece of cloth you just put on your forearm. There's no padding whatsoever. It serves no purpose, but guys wear it all the time. It's just called a pro guard, and I always liked that he rocked those. Because a couple guys on my team at the time did as well, and kudos to Agim Shabai. I didn't think, I guess I shouldn't say that. I'm surprised Agim Shabai has not come up on this podcast yet. I think we were overdue for an Agim Shabai discussion.
He was the one who introduced me to the inside kind of option shovel pass with Stanton. I was kind of getting into football because I'm a young guy, but first time I'd seen that, I remember thinking, oh no, it's a fumble, but no, it's a forward pass. That's a perfect play. No. So we're going to move on now to a rough topic here. Big Ten football.
God, what a perfect time.
Big life, big stage.
How do we not have Drew Sharp calling in right now?
I know. Joe tweeted a great picture of Sharp
from
Oregon. That was just a perfect photo.
But I know people hate Drew Sharp and they'll never believe me, but he is seriously the nicest guy in the world.
He is. He's very nice and he's very funny.
He's very funny. There's so many things I wish I could say right now that I'm sure he would. He just he is. Yeah, he's a piece of work, and man, he's a great guy.
It was fun watching the Wisconsin-Arizona basketball game with him in New York.
Yeah.
When we were all cheering on the Big Ten, and he was trying to tell us that the Big Ten sucked. So, but yeah, Big Ten football. Michigan loses 31-0 to Notre Dame. Ohio State loses 35-21 at home to Virginia Tech. Nebraska ekes by McNeese State in the final seconds. Purdue gets blown out by Central Michigan. Iowa needs a comeback at the last minute to beat Ball State. Northwestern loses to Northern Illinois. Rutgers took care of business against Howard, and Wisconsin was up, I think, 9-3 against Western Illinois at halftime before kind of breaking that out. So it was an ugly, ugly day. The old noon games for the Big Ten where nobody else is really playing and everybody's watching the Big Ten struggle. And Penn State beat Akron 21-3. That was a really boring game.
Take that, Zips.
So, yeah, Big Ten football, I think the thing that nobody really was willing to say nationally, but I think everybody was thinking is if MSU does not go undefeated in the Big Ten, is that a major disappointment? Is that how far things have fallen? Because MSU was arguably the best-looking team from the day, and they lost by 19 points. I mean, obviously, I'm sure listeners don't want us to jinx it or get ahead of ourselves or whatnot, but the way the schedule sets up with Ohio State, Michigan, Nebraska at home, even Rutgers is at home because, Rutgers is now carrying the flag. And and Maryland had to squeak by South Florida. So things just keep getting better as I remember them.
Yeah.
I mean, how do you see MSU fitting into this Big Ten right now?
Oh my God! At the top, but no, it was a weird morning. Like I started, I'm checking these. This was day after the wedding, so I'm not exactly moving 100 miles per hour in the morning. And I'm like checking scores on my phone, and I'm like, well, these can't be right. And I start turning. You know what it was like? It was like like you're ever watching something on ESPN and the ticker goes by, and you just see a ridiculous college basketball score,
or like a football team has 1 point.
Well, no, you see like a college basketball score like DePaul 71, Duke 43, and you're just like, huh? And then you go, oh, it's a women's score. You didn't notice the W. Like that's what I felt like was happening when I was looking at these Big Ten scores on Saturday morning. Like something had to be wrong, but they weren't, and it just kept getting worse throughout the day. And the only team really that looks good like from the final score is Wisconsin, and they were holding on for dear life in the first half.
I think it was 2-0 well into the second quarter.
Yeah, it was
safety on the opening kickoff.
Yeah, and they finally pulled away, but they've got quarterback issues. Who knows about them? Purdue gets smoked, which to me is the least surprising result of the day. Well, although maybe I really like Northern Illinois against Northwestern. I don't consider that an upset. Northwestern's a dumpster fire.
Yeah, well, you didn't think they'd be a dumpster fire, though.
But you lose those two.
Did you see what Pat Fitzgerald said today, Wednesday, about fans being upset? He goes, no shit. I mean, that's where Northwestern football's at right now.
Yeah, no, it's tough, and they don't look to be getting. I mean, they haven't won since that. Remember that Ohio State game last year where they had the lead?
They were leading into the fourth quarter,
and we're thinking, oh my God, here comes Northwestern. They were kind of a sexy sleeper pick all summer, and then it starts to go, and then they got that big game. Yeah, not. I don't remember.
I mean for the Big Ten West.
Okay, well, yeah, that's just. Nobody wants to win that division. But the thing, yeah, so you got Northwestern. That didn't really surprise me. Iowa should have lost. I still don't know how they won.
Yeah, that was like when they came back against Pitt a couple years ago. Every year they seem to just kind of have a crazy non-conference win that shouldn't have been that close.
Right, because I'm sure every State fan watching at home had the same reaction. It was like the MSU game started, so Ball State's beating Iowa 13-3 with a couple minutes left. It's like, all right, that's over. So maybe around like the third TV time out of the Oregon game, you glance over at the screen. It's, oh my God, Iowa won. So they had to pull that off. And what can we say about Michigan that hasn't already been said?
Yeah, let's kind of focus on that. Michigan, Ohio State, the Big Two, Big Two, Little 12 thing. Ohio State, they lose Braxton Miller, so it's going to be a struggle. And I picked Ohio State 14-10 because I thought Virginia Tech's defense was legit, and
I believe I said Ohio State was going to smoke Virginia Tech.
uh, that what Virginia Tech did was simple and brilliant. They loaded up with a bear front and
Yeah.
just dared JT Barrett to throw over the top on tight coverage. He went 9 for 29 passing.
Boy, did he ever.
3 interceptions. Um, in the fourth quarter alone, Virginia Tech had 6 sacks and 2 picks. And I think that was in a span of like 14 plays. It was really, and then to cap it off with the pick 6, the exact same way the Michigan game ends, sort of, was kind of funny. Yeah, you kind of had to just laugh that Ohio State and Michigan lost, and then kind of went pick 6. And the Michigan game, that might have been, when you look back at it, it might have been the most winnable 31-0 game you've ever seen, because like the players didn't play that bad. It was just like, apparently the first time Michigan passed the ball past the first down marker was with like 20 seconds left in the second quarter, which is incredible. And Michigan misses 2 field goals. Everett Golson looked really good, made a couple of just really great throws. And the game ends with Devin Funchess injured and Devin Gardner injured, which I don't know why he's in there on that last play. The pick 6, it gets called back because he got clocked, illegally hit. Who knows how healthy they are going into this weekend. But
yeah. It's tough. I do see Brady Hoke did address that today, and it is really easy in retrospect to say why is he in there. But
I was saying it at the time, at least. But yeah. I understood. Hoke said earlier in the week, he said, when I played at Ball State, we scored 21 points in a minute, which is understandable. The Funchess thing, I think that was earlier in the fourth quarter. That was more understandable. It was the Gardner one that I just didn't understand, with it being the very last play of the game.
Yeah, but I get what he's saying. He's just saying he's not willing to wave the white flag, and it's stupid and it's a stubborn mentality. But I understand it, and to a certain extent, I agree with it. I say, hey, we're playing a football game here. We're going to try to get a touchdown, so we're not getting shut out. We're going to compete till the final whistle. Again, probably stupid and hard-headed, and maybe
I just think with an injury-prone quarterback and an offensive line that really struggles, it was just a risk that I don't think I would have taken. But I'm not a coach, and there's a reason why. So
there's no logical explanation for it, but I'm just saying I get what he was trying to accomplish, and I can't say that I don't agree with it.
He's still trying to instill that toughness, and know.
But I think that train's kind of come and gone at the same time, too. Like, it's a little late in your tenure to be instilling those values, you know what I mean? That's like kind of year 1 and year 2 shit that should be there by now, and it's like we're just starting from scratch. So, I don't know. I think it's going to get really, really ugly in Ann Arbor.
So, how terrible, I mean, the Big Ten West, I made a comment on Saturday that Rutgers could win the Big Ten West if they were in it, and some Iowa fans got upset. And some Iowa fans got upset at me, and then
that's impressive to make Iowa fans.
Later on in the day, Iowa's down 13-3 to Ball State, so it's like Minnesota's 2-0. Middle Tennessee State's pretty good. I mean, they're decent. Who they beat? So is Minnesota the favorite? Wisconsin, I know they look good a little bit against LSU. Are they the favorite? But can McAvoy make it through the season playing like he is if Estave's not going to be there? Nebraska, you'd think they would be better, but McNeese State, the week prior, Nebraska blew out FAU, and you're thinking, oh, maybe they kind of have something going. And then the McNeese State game, you're just like, what the heck's going on? Northwestern's a mess. Illinois barely squeaked by Youngstown and Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
Iowa was my pick to win, but if Brandon Scherf is out for a bit, makes things tough. It just feels like it's completely wide open, and I don't know. Does Minnesota look like the favorite right now? I don't even know.
I guess I still consider Wisconsin the favorite because they played well for stretches at times in that LSU game, kind of like what we're talking about with Michigan State and Oregon. I mean, there were For most of the game, Wisconsin dominated and looked like a team that was one of the best in the country. Now they totally collapsed. They have no passing game, and Stave's got the mental yips or something. I don't know, but that performance sticks out in my mind. Maybe there was a bit of a letdown factor this week to start that game. But to me, they're still the favorite, and here's why. I do like Minnesota. I really like what Jerry Kill's done, and I like the program. And the problem with Minnesota is the schedule. They've got at Nebraska and at Wisconsin to finish the season. So, yeah.
How's it look before then? Because that means they could be on a decent roll heading into
It's okay. Well, they've got TCU on Saturday. I'm telling you, I'm a Gophers fan.
The last few years,
yeah. It's so they got TCU on Saturday, and then they go. They get another crap team, and then they go to Michigan. Which who knows? Who's to say Jerry Kill can't go into the big house now and beat him?
The little brown jug says otherwise.
I mean, if Michigan's offensive line, that's the thing. Like we said all year, is the offensive line going to be any better? Because if it's not, then I don't see this offense working at all. And now you're going into that game and they get absolutely abused by Notre Dame. So what is to say that that's not going to be just an absolute disaster all year?
When you look at Michigan, all of a sudden, almost any game feels like it's up for grabs. I think Utah goes there in 2 weeks, and Utah looks pretty good this year. Utah went in there in 2008 and beat them. You got Utah. I mean, you mentioned Minnesota, Penn State. Suddenly, a lot of those games, you kind of pencil them in for 9-3, losing the 3 rivalry games. But with the way that they lost that Notre Dame game, although I will say I think Notre Dame's pretty good this year.
I do too. I like Notre Dame.
But 31-0, I think really throws a lot of games into question now.
Yeah, and like I remember Rico Beard on Jack Ebling's Press Pass show on Fox on Sunday nights. He picked there was like a preseason discussion, and he picked. They were talking about Michigan's schedule, and he said they were going to lose at Rutgers. And, like, everyone starts laughing like it's the funniest thing they've ever heard in their lives. It's like, I mean, just rip-roaring laughter over the fact that Rico picked Rutgers to beat Michigan at Rutgers. And I'm sitting there watching going, why is this so far out of the question? We're talking about a team that really hasn't done much the past couple of years, going into a road environment that they've never been before. Brady Hoke isn't exactly the best coach on the road, so what's so funny about that? And now you look at it,
and now Rutgers looks, decent.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's crazy to me. I'm going to stop talking about Michigan.
And back to the Big Ten West, the concern when the divisions were divided that you didn't have any showstoppers on that side. You had Nebraska and Wisconsin that are, above average. Even though Wisconsin made three Rose Bowls in a row, they're still viewed as kind of a decent program, and how the way last year went, a decent program. And on the East, you've got Michigan State. Michigan still recruits. Ohio State. And you knew Penn State with James Franklin was going to recruit well, and they've got a top 10 class right now. And then you get the news this week that the sanctions are lifted. And they're not just lifted. Penn State is all of a sudden eligible for a bowl this year, game against Rutgers, and every game moving forward becomes way more important than it would have been otherwise. They're immediately eligible for all postseason, and they'll be able to have a full 85 scholarships beginning in 2015-16. So all of a sudden the Big Ten East looks even more stacked, as much as one Big Ten division can be stacked in relevant to the other one. Your thoughts on Penn State? I know some people furious on different sides for different reasons. I'll tell you my thoughts after, if you have any thoughts on the whole thing getting kind of finished now.
Yeah, well, first of all, great timing by the Big Ten PR department releasing that in the middle of the Ray Rice fiasco. That is shameful. Listen, I understand.
That one's on the NCAA.
Man,
Not even
I mean, I really, really dislike PR people for a whole number of reasons I can't even get into right now. But to take advantage of the Ray Rice situation like that, I mean, come on, you're trying to bury it in that and whatever.
I don't know, because it's such a big deal. I mean, in the sense that do you think they were hiding it? How long would they be hiding it? I can't imagine they'd be like, let's wait a week and then tell Penn State they're all of a sudden eligible for a bowl. I don't know.
That's Michael. Like, did James Franklin have an indication that this was coming?
He said he found out on social media, and that's the way his whole team found out when it
but he knew he had to have known it was a possibility at some point. I mean, he had to have known that this was in the works.
He said he knew, because I know it got reduced a little bit last year. He said all he knew was that they were working hard to reduce it, and the most recent report was positive for Penn State, but he wasn't promised anything, and he said he didn't promise anything to. At least publicly, he's been very upfront that it's kind of out of his hands, and he doesn't really care to talk about it. Even at his press conference this week, he goes, this is great. We're very appreciative of everybody that worked to get this done, but I just want to talk about Rutgers today. Although I know none of you are going to ask me about that. And then he talked about it, and he used the phrase, we get to chase their dreams now, the players that came in, the players that stayed through it, the 49 that are still there got a standing ovation in front of the meeting room. Publicly he was very subdued and focused on Rutgers. I imagine privately, internally, he was ecstatic, and why wouldn't you be?
Yeah, no, I can buy that he was not keeping up on this situation every second because he's in season now. He's got other focuses. So while I think a lot of times these coaches aren't truthful, I can buy that one. But otherwise, yeah, in a way, you feel good for the players that stuck around and bought into something, and that's great. But to me, I really don't like the message this sends, reducing the sanctions. Now, one, I think it's ridiculous to do it in season, to say, okay, now you're eligible, and it's like it's just totally new and sprung on everyone in the middle of the season. That I can't get over that, and I just can't get over the fact that to me these sanctions weren't necessarily saying to Penn State that it wasn't about one single thing. It was basically, okay, clearly your priorities were so out of whack, you were willing to do everything in your power to protect Penn State football, no matter the cost, and the consequences were dire. I mean, it's insane to me that this was allowed to happen, and to me, those sanctions said the environment allowed it to happen. So let's shut down the environment for a little while. You guys have earned a timeout, clearly, for doing something that is really unprecedented in terms of college football. I mean, I don't remember a situation like this, but basically saying, hey, guys, if this is allowed to happen, then what else can happen? How screwed up are we? Let's refocus a little bit and get back to sort of the fundamental values of this school and this program. So I thought to take them away now, it just kind of it lessens the whole deal. I hate it, and I think Penn State, while I understand those players and the people on the staff and many in the department had nothing to do with Jerry Sandusky, it kind of sickens me to see this happen right now.
Yeah, I mean, you said unprecedented, and I think that's what it was. The situation was unprecedented, and the penalties were unprecedented in the sense that they were different than the SMU death penalty, because the SMU death penalty had to deal with NCAA rules. The way I look at it, I don't know. I understand people being on both sides of it. Was it a culture thing? Did the Penn State community pay as much as they needed to? Did they need to? The players who were there, the coaches who came in afterward. I mean, a lot of people lost their jobs. You got the administrators there that are on trial or will be on trial, and they'll get their just punishment for everything. Is it football? Did it just happen through football? I don't know, and I don't think the NCAA really knew what they were doing. I think they just decided to jump in when there was so much public against Penn State that something had to be done. I do think it's weird doing this in season. I mean, I imagine this is something they've been working on for a long time. What if Penn State was coming off a loss last week? Do you think the coaches are thinking, you couldn't give into the service the week prior, maybe we would have been more motivated? It is a weird situation to have it in season, and it's hard to compare it to any other penalties because it's just not the same thing. These weren't necessarily NCAA rules committed, whether it's USC or Ohio State. I don't really know. I'm happy for the players and the coaches that are there. They didn't do anything. I think it's a testament to the players who did stay there that they were staying there for more than just to win football games or something like that. And so it's a weird situation. I'm in some ways it makes sense, in some ways it doesn't. I understand. I didn't understand the penalties. I don't understand removing the penalties. I don't really have a strong take on this either way, pretty much, just because, like you said, it was unprecedented. I don't know. But what we do know is all of a sudden the Big Ten East now has another contender for the division title, and that's Penn State, where MSU finishes the season.
Yep.
And this Land-Grant Trophy, this fierce Land-Grant Trophy rivalry just got upped a notch. I'm sure Perlis will be fired up for that one.
Oh yeah.
So just a weird situation. So we're gonna kind of transition here into, we'll do Big Ten picks. Since MSU doesn't play this week, we'll just quickly run down Big Ten games. Surprisingly, some interesting games, and then we'll answer a couple questions you guys sent in. So the games this week. Some interesting ones. They're not high profile, but they could go either way, I think. You got Maryland and West. Just give me a pick. You don't need to go into why. You got West Virginia at Maryland. Maryland is a 4-point favorite. West Virginia obviously nearly beat Alabama. Maryland struggled against South Florida. Who do you think, West Virginia or Maryland?
I like West Virginia.
I picked West Virginia too.
Yeah, that's a confusing line. That's a weird line, though. That line.
I'm guessing 3 points because it's at home, and otherwise it's pretty much close. Indiana Bowling Green, I think could be a really high-scoring game. Indiana's favored by 8. The over/under is 70. So that's.
I don't know if that's even close to high enough.
I'll go Indiana.
Yeah, I like Indiana. I don't know if they cover though. I think Bowling Green could cover at home.
I was surprised. Bowling Green got shellacked in their first game against Western Kentucky, who turns out maybe could be a pretty good team.
Yeah,
but they got a new coach, so I don't know. Ohio State, Kent State. I assume we're going Ohio State on this one. Michigan, Miami of Ohio. Now the pick here, Michigan's favored by a ton. They'll win. Do you think there's a chance that they don't get 100,000 people at this game?
Yeah. I do. There are people who are fed up, and it's because they're not used to it. They're not used to it at all.
This was going to be the game that had a chance. Appalachian State drew a lot of headlines. You could buy 99 tickets the week of the game, but it's the opener. You figure you're going to get people coming for the opener. I haven't seen much this week about Michigan giving away tickets like they did for Appalachian State. I think there's a chance. I don't think it'll happen, but I do think there's a chance that that streak ends.
Yeah, I mean they're just not used to it. Like back in the
It,
day,
it is
Michigan
a
State fans did that all the time. 31-point loss. Okay, on to the next. And it was just it was very frustrating for them, but it happened time and time again. In Michigan, they're not used to it, and the home schedule sucks this year. They have no marquee games at the Big House, and if they continue to show this type of play, then yeah, I mean I really think the fans are going to start to dwindle.
And well, the fact that this game is at 3:30, I think helps. You'll
Yep.
have people getting there less early. 3:30 BTN game, which is kind of a weird slot for BTN, but 'cause I think you'll get more students there that way. So Iowa State, which I think is the most underrated internet rivalry there is. Iowa State fans online this is just a intense week. If you go to any Iowa blogs, Iowa State blogs, it's just a riot. Iowa's favored by 10 at home. They're 2-0. Iowa State's 0-2. I got Iowa. This game's always kind of wacky. Kirk Ferentz is actually 7-8 against Iowa State, which is kind of crazy. What do you think?
I mean, Iowa State has shown time and time again they can beat Iowa, and a lot of these games have been really close and fun to watch. I do like Iowa simply because I think Iowa's defense is pretty good and will be pretty good for much of the year, and Iowa State has absolutely zero passing game. And that's the kind of you got to hit a couple of those big plays to pull off an upset in an in-state game like this. So yeah, I like the Hawkeyes. But again, 10 points is a lot for a rivalry game like this at home. I would stay away from that one.
Yeah, Minnesota at TCU on Fox Sports 1. TCU's favored by 14. I think TCU wins, but I think Minnesota could cover in this one. I think the Gophers have looked decent enough
we'll see.
Close.
Yeah, I mean, if Minnesota comes out and keeps it close and plays well, then yeah, I mean that end of the season game at Wisconsin all of a sudden looks really, really interesting. But can they do it? We'll see. I don't know. I think they'll be pretty overmatched here.
Illinois, Washington at Washington. These are two pretty. Washington's a weird team. They beat Hawaii like 17-16 in the opener, and then last week they beat Eastern Washington 59-52, like 1,100 yards of offense. Crazy game. Washington's favored by 13. The over/under is 65. I don't know because Illinois has looked ugly, but they've also put up some decent offensive numbers. Washington has looked crazy in 2 games, like I mentioned. I'll say Washington wins and covers just because of the Big Ten's history traveling out to Pac-12 stadiums, not counting Rutgers.
This is my upset pick of the week. I think this is going to be Wes Lunt's national coming out party.
Again, other than the ones he had at Oklahoma State. Big Ten coming out. But it's weird. He's had some good games, but then they struggle offensively through like a half or 3 quarters, and
they've got young skill position players, and they're still trying to get in sync with some of the receivers, but obviously the offense can put up points. And every game with Illinois, I say, well, the defense can't be any worse than it was last week, so maybe this is finally the week.
Purdue Notre Dame at Lucas Oil Stadium in the Shamrock Series game.
Oh, I didn't know that was at Lucas Oil. I don't like that. I don't like that at all. That's stupid.
My question to you will be: do you think this game will be a sellout? Because Notre Dame.
No.
Well, here's why. Because Notre Dame, every week they have a home game. It is one of the most expensive tickets to buy at all. It's crazy. Notre Dame fans, props to them, always really expensive to go to home games. Not only that, they go to State, they go to Texas and play Washington State, they go to Ireland, they go to Chicago, they go to New York, and they get fans everywhere. And this is right there in Indiana, in Indianapolis. You don't think it's going to be a sellout?
You know what? I'm looking at StubHub right now, and I'm going to retract my previous statement.
Oh yeah, what are they at?
They're going from they're going from $100, and StubHub apparently.
Is that StubHub?
StubHub's got yeah, cheapest is $97 right now for like a
Wow.
corner seat.
Wow. So
Um,
I'd imagine it's gonna be a sellout then.
yeah, I mean upper decks are going for
Notre
like
Dame fans, I know they get
140.
I know they get ragged on
This is
for a
nuts.
I know they get ragged on for a national brand or whatever, but they got fans everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's I mean, I think they sold out Soldier Field the other year when they played Miami there. Um,
Did they sell that out?
I think they did. They might have.
Okay.
But Notre Dame's wearing some weird jerseys this year. They're gonna look like Purdue. I don't know if you've seen them.
I like the Under Armour.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
weird. It looks like Purdue. They're going with a gold helmet with a stripe down the middle and ND on the side, so they look like Purdue. And
Oh, you mean it's an alternate for this week?
yeah, and
Oh,
then
no, I haven't seen those yet.
Purdue's going to be wearing their black helmet with white jersey, white pants, which I think will be a great look. Um,
Notre Dame looks like Akron. I just looked those up.
Akron or Purdue, and so I really don't like those.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah, but I know they always have special jerseys for the Shamrock series and whatnot. Penn State Rutgers, which apparently has become a very heated rivalry this week, and I asked some Penn State fans why that's the case because the record is like 22 and I think and they haven't played since 1995. Apparently, Penn State gets a ton of good recruits from New Jersey instead of Rutgers, and so Rutgers fans really hate Penn State for that reason. And this is at Rutgers, so I think this is actually going to be a pretty good game. Penn State's favored by 4 at Rutgers. I don't know. Hackenberg's looked good, but he's also had some bad interceptions. Rutgers' offense with Ralph Friedgen in as the offensive coordinator looks pretty good. I'm going to take Penn State, though. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Penn State wins, but I think it'll be close. And I do think with Hackenberg, he's very, very talented, obviously, and he just kind of looks a little robotic to me in terms of like everything's very technically sound, and he's got the arm, and he does all these great things. But you're right, he doesn't always make the right decision. He hasn't really shown the ability to necessarily take over a game for stretches, and I think this is going to be a good test for him and a tougher test than we thought it would be when the schedule first came out.
Yeah. So who's your pick?
Oh, I got to do that, don't I? Yeah, Penn State.
Okay. Last one is Nebraska at Fresno State at 10:30 Eastern on CBS Sports Network. Now, the past few years, Fresno State's been a really good team, but this year they're 0-2. Not looking too good. Nebraska's 2-0, but it hasn't been looking too good. Nebraska's minus 11. The last time Nebraska went out west, they got shellacked by UCLA in the Rose Bowl. And we mentioned how Big Ten teams always struggle going out west. Nebraska minus 11. What do you think?
I mean, that's a lot of points, but like you said, Fresno has not exactly been outstanding this year. I don't know. It's just to me like Tommy Armstrong is got to get something going, and he's got to make better decisions. And this could be a weird game, but I think Nebraska wins, but I like Fresno State to cover.
It's weird. Fresno State hasn't played a home game. They played at USC, at Utah. They give up more than 50 points each time. So I'm going to say Nebraska just because apparently Fresno looks very struggly. So that's it for the picks. Got a couple questions from you guys, and we'll wrap up. Will MSU bounce back after the bye week like they did last year? Defense seems suspect. We kind of touched on the defense a little bit. Last year they lose to Notre Dame going into the bye week, and was the game after that? Was that the Youngstown State game, or was that?
No, it was the Iowa game. It was they had a week off after the Notre Dame game last year, and then they went out and the offense exploded for 26 points. Which at the time it was like, oh my God, like it was just it was a godsend. and now that's kind of the norm. But yeah, last week the bye week did them some good. This week, yeah, I mean you'd hope they look good against Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, Eastern looks bad. Wyoming actually has looked decent. We'll see how they do. They've got Oregon this week. I don't imagine that game would be close, but so I can't imagine they're gonna have much trouble for the next few weeks. So I think they'll bounce back from the bye week pretty fine, partially because of who they got. I guess this is kind of just the obligatory question. Arnett apparently isn't going to have a big impact this year. No.
Can I boycott this question? No, it's okay because I'm gonna start going on and on and on here. But
we kind of got it. You don't need to get into a rant if that's what you're feeling right now.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling a rant. I'll just say he is. Here's what I'm going to say on D'Anthony Arnett. He's not in the playing group.
Okay. Okay, you can answer this one. This is a good one. In the third quarter against Oregon, there was that one play where the entire offensive line cut blocked, and the receivers were all apparently blocking downfield. What was the play? That was supposed to be, I think, a quick slant.
Yeah,
inside.
Right.
Is that what you saw in the film?
Yeah, I mean it's supposed to be from what I understand. That's it's you cut them down, and that at least guarantees you by your quarterback a little bit of time to get the quick throw out. And
it's supposed to so the defensive linemen, they're down, so their arms aren't out to block the pass.
Right, and then you get a quick look at something, and apparently Oregon had it covered, and at that point you're sort of screwed.
Yeah, it was weird. I don't think I've ever seen MSU run that before.
No, I hadn't either.
They didn't do it very well, obviously.
I want
to just mention again, they ran a screen pass that went nowhere. This team, the screen pass just doesn't work with them. The screen pass to the running back where the quarterback has to buy time and dip it off to the running back. I don't know if they telegraph it. I don't know if the linemen don't get over quick enough. I don't know, but they got one against Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, and I remember it sticking out in my mind vividly because I've never seen it work in years. I thought Dave Warner in the first half and into the third quarter called a really good game. It seemed like they got a little conservative late in the third, but at the same time the Lions started not blocking as well, so maybe it just feels like that. I don't know. It's kind of not really answering the question, but just another takeaway I had. And the last question, this is not football. Thoughts on the Valpo game tomorrow? And what that is the soccer team plays Valpo tomorrow at home. I think MSU is going to win. They are, I think, 2-0-1 this year, coming off a 0-0 tie at nationally ranked University of Illinois at Chicago. I haven't seen the soccer team play this year, but apparently it's supposed to be pretty good this year, so I guess my pick in the MSU Valpo soccer game will be MSU. Is that your pick?
I don't know. What you said, I think you covered all the bases, and
Valpo is I think 1-0-2 this year.
I could pretend like I know what I'm talking about right now, but I'm not going to do that. That game has not crossed my mind once this week. So
I think MSU made the NCAA tournament last year and lost to Notre Dame. I think that was last year. So they got a pretty good men's soccer program there.
Yep.
He's doing good things there. So that'll do it for us. Once again, if you have questions, send them our way at any point. Also, if anyone knows of any free ways to get my archived audio here into an RSS to upload to iTunes, that'd be great. Make things easier for you guys probably. So MSU's on a bye this week. Enjoy the games. Like we said, there's some interesting Big Ten games. Not many. There's no really marquee games all year. College Game Day is going to Fargo again to play the University of Incarnate Word, which is in its second or third year of football. I don't understand this pick at all. I know they had a good time in Fargo last year. Maybe they just were let's just go to Fargo again. Kirk
Herbstreit just found some awesome dive bar that he's been dying to get back to.
I don't think Tennessee Oklahoma is going to be that great of a game, but I figured that would have been a nice pick to highlight those two power programs, or go Division II, Division III, or something off the map. But whatever. I've been seeing a lot of it anyway. So for Dan, this is Chris Vanini. Thanks for sitting through another Spartan Tailgate podcast. Next week we'll start looking ahead to Eastern Michigan and recapping what could be another eventful Big Ten day, I guess. So again, for Dan, this is Chris, and thanks for listening, and see you later, everybody.
See ya.